After my mom's death, my father said I had to give my $30 million inheritance to my stepbrother because he needed it to start a new business. When I refused, he forcefully took the money, saying, "I will not allow you to waste my ex-wife's money." I laughed hard and handed him the will paper. He exclaimed, "This can't be real." The day my world shattered began like any other family gathering. Forced smiles, hollow pleasantries, and an underlying tension that I had learned to ignore over the years. The grand living room of our family estate gleamed under the chandelier's soft light, a perfect picture of wealth and comfort. My stepmother, Vivian, stood by the mahogany table, arranging fresh-cut roses in an antique vase, her expression overly cheerful, almost rehearsed. That should have been my first warning. My father, Richard, paced near his desk, checking his watch every few minutes. He was always a man of control, never one to waste time on unnecessary chatter. Today, however, something about the way he avoided looking at me set my nerves on edge. "Everyone, please sit," he announced, his voice steady, authoritative, the tone I had respected all my life. "I have an important announcement." I settled into the velvet armchair, across from my stepbrother, Ethan, who sprawled lazily, twirling the heavy-faced watch on his wrist. He shot me a smirk, the same infuriating expression I'd seen countless times when he managed to get away with something he didn't deserve. "I've been thinking about the future of our company," my father continued, his words slow and deliberate. "After careful consideration, I've decided that majority ownership and control will be transferred to Ethan." The air left my lungs. My hands clenched the armrests as his words settled into my bones like ice. "What?" The word barely escaped my lips. "It makes perfect sense," Vivian chimed in, her manicured hand resting proudly on Ethan's shoulder. "A fresh perspective is exactly what the company needs." "Dad," I started, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I've spent years working for this. I know every client, every contract. I helped build this company with you." My father sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Jessica, please. This decision wasn't made lightly. Ethan has new ideas that align better with the company's future vision." I turned to Ethan, who leaned forward, barely concealing his amusement. "Don't worry, sis," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I'll make sure we find a place for you. Maybe HR." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Some capacity? Dad, you promised me. You said when I finished my MBA." "Things change," my father interrupted, his voice sharp, final. Vivian folded her arms, tilting her head in mock concern. "Honestly, Jessica, this reaction is exactly why a calmer hand is needed in leadership. You're getting too emotional." I felt the walls closing in around me. The years of effort, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, it had all been for nothing. He had decided, and there was no room for me in the company I had dedicated my life to. I stood abruptly, my vision blurring as I grabbed my purse. "Congratulations, Ethan," I forced out, swallowing the burning in my throat. "I hope you enjoy running the company I helped build." "Jessica, don't be dramatic," Vivian called after me as I turned for the door. I paused, glancing back one last time. "Dad," I said softly. He didn't meet my eyes. "We'll talk later," he muttered. I shook my head. "No, we won't." I walked out of that house with my head held high, keeping my step steady until I reached my car. The moment I shut the door behind me, the tears finally fell. My phone buzzed in my lap, a message from Lucy, my best friend. "How did it go?" My fingers trembled as I typed. "They gave everything to Ethan. Everything I worked for. Everything Dad promised me." Her response came instantly. "I'm coming over. Don't do anything stupid before I get there." As I started the engine, I glanced back at the house one last time. Through the window, I saw my father standing there, watching me leave. For a fleeting second, I thought I saw regret on his face. But then Vivian appeared beside him, whispering something in his ear. And he turned away. 3 years of my life, gone in an instant. Years of hard work, trust, and sacrifice, handed to someone who had never lifted a finger. Because Vivian had wormed her way into my father's life, convincing him that her son was more deserving than his own daughter. My phone buzzed again. "Lucy, we'll figure this out. You're not alone." I took a deep breath, wiping my tears away. She was right. This wasn't over. They wanted to push me aside? Fine. But they were about to learn that I wasn't the kind of person who disappeared quietly. 3 days after my world fell apart, I found myself sitting in the dimly lit office of Virgil Monroe, the family lawyer who had known me since childhood. His office smelled of leather and old books, the scent of history and secrets locked away in thick files. Virgil leaned back in his chair, studying me with the same quiet intensity he had when I was a little girl playing on the office carpet while my father signed business contracts. But today, I wasn't a child. Today, I was here to figure out how everything I'd worked for had been stolen from me. "I don't understand," I said, twisting a tissue between my fingers. How could my father legally do this? I thought the company was supposed to be split between any children. Virgil sighed, removing his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. Your father restructured the ownership last year. As majority shareholder, he had the right to transfer his shares to whomever he chose. I froze. Last year? He nodded. The betrayal cut even deeper. So he had planned this all along. While I had been working, learning, proving myself, he had already decided I would never have a place in the company. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. So that's it? He wins. Virgil hesitated before standing and walking to a filing cabinet. He pulled out a thick folder, handling it with a kind of reverence that made my heart race. There's something else you should know, he said, placing it in front of me. I stared at the folder. What is it? Your grandmother's will, he said carefully. Your father never read the full details. But she left something behind for you. I opened the folder with trembling hands, my eyes scanning the document. Then, I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. $2 million. The numbers blurred for a moment as I struggled to process them. She left me a trust fund? Virgil nodded. But there are conditions. Of course, there were. My grandmother had never believed in handing down wealth without purpose. You can only access the money if you build a successful business before the age of 30, Virgil explained. Specifically, you must show a profitable quarter within your first year of operation. If you fail, the trust dissolves and the money is donated to charity. I exhaled sharply, my mind spinning. She wanted to give you a chance, Virgil continued, but she also wanted you to earn your success. I stared at the paper, my fingers tracing the bold numbers. My grandmother had always been a woman who saw the truth in people long before they saw it in themselves. She had seen this coming. She had known my father might betray me, and she had left me a way out. Does my father know about this? I asked. No, Virgil's expression was firm. And, he can't. Your grandmother was very clear. This information was to be revealed only to you and only if you were ever disinherited from the family business. I felt a shiver down my spine. She knew. Virgil folded his hands on the desk. And Jessica, you can't tell anyone. Not your father. Not Vivian. Not even Lucy. I blinked. Why? She wanted your success to be entirely yours, Virgil said. No one should ever be able to claim they helped you or that you had an unfair advantage. She believed that if people knew, they would treat you differently, try to manipulate you. She wanted you to build something that was truly yours. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of her words settle over me. For the first time since my father's betrayal, I felt something other than anger. I felt determination. I had spent years proving my worth, only to be cast aside like an afterthought. They had taken everything from me. My future, my father's promises, the life I had been building. But they hadn't taken me. They wanted to push me out? Fine. I'd build something better. Sitting across from Lucy at our favorite coffee shop, I pulled up my laptop, my heart racing with excitement. Okay, hear me out, I said, turning the screen toward her. Eco-friendly packaging, biodegradable, cost-effective, and scalable. Businesses want to go green, but they don't have reliable suppliers. We can fix that. Lucy raised an eyebrow, stirring her latte. You're talking about competing with billion-dollar corporations. Do you even have a manufacturer? Not yet, but I've been researching, I said, pulling up another tab filled with statistics. The market is booming. If we can streamline supply chains and offer direct partnerships with businesses, we can actually make sustainability affordable. She tapped her nails against the table, considering I don't know, Jess. You just lost your job. Starting a business isn't exactly the safest move right now. I leaned forward. I don't want safe. I want to build something that's mine. Something no one can take away. Lucy sighed, but a smile tugged at the corner of her lips. You're serious about this? Dead serious. She took a sip of her coffee, then set the cup down with a determined nod. All right, let's do it. For the next 2 weeks, I barely slept. My days were consumed with market research, supplier calls, and financial planning. I reached out to manufacturers who specialized in biodegradable packaging, negotiating bulk pricing and sustainable production methods. Some ignored me. Others laughed. But a few saw my vision. Funding was the biggest challenge. I had access to my grandmother's trust fund, but I couldn't let anyone know. So, I carefully staged my finances, transferring small amounts to personal accounts, making it appear as if I was pooling resources from savings and outside investors. It was risky but necessary. One evening, Lucy and I sat in a tiny modern co-working space downtown, reviewing our first manufacturer contracts. The rent was low, the furniture mismatched, but it was ours. This is actually happening, Lucy whispered, scanning the agreement. I smiled, exhaustion pressing at my eyes. Yeah, it is. Word must have traveled fast because, within a week, Ethan was suddenly very interested in my finances. "Come on, Jess," he said, appearing out of nowhere at the coffee shop where I worked most mornings. "I know you don't have that much in savings. Where's the money coming from?" I kept my face neutral. "I have investors." His smirk faltered. "Who?" "None of your business." Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms. "Meredith is worried. She thinks you're planning some kind of legal action." I let out a short laugh. "That's funny. She wasn't worried when she convinced Dad to steal my future. She's just looking out for the family," he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. I stood up, gathering my laptop and notes. "Then she doesn't need to worry about me. I'm not coming for them. I'm building something better." As I walked away, I felt Ethan's gaze burning into my back. Let him wonder. Let him worry. I had bigger things to focus on. Sitting in the sleek, glass-walled office of a major restaurant chain, I adjusted my blazer and forced my hands to stay steady. Across from me, Sarah Whitman, the company's head of procurement, examined one of our biodegradable takeout containers like it might fall apart in her hands. "This is impressive," she said, turning it over. "But we've been burned before by startups that couldn't keep up with demand. What makes you different?" I had been waiting for this moment. Clicking my tablet awake, I pulled up a detailed presentation. "We've secured partnerships with 3 manufacturing facilities across the country, ensuring we can scale production without bottlenecks. Plus, we don't just sell packaging. We offer a full transition service, including staff training and waste management solutions." Sarah raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That's a bold claim." I smiled. "It's not a claim, it's a guarantee. And unlike bigger suppliers, we're agile enough to adapt to your specific needs." She glanced at her assistant, who nodded approvingly. Then, she set the container down and leaned back. "All right," she said. "We'll give you a 3-month trial. 2 locations to start. If you deliver, we'll talk expansion." Victory. I fought to keep my expression professional as we shook hands, but inside, I was soaring. This wasn't just a deal, it was proof that my company was more than an idea. It was real. The very next day Ethan called. "Hey, sis," he said, his voice overly casual. "Let's grab coffee. I have an idea that could benefit both of us." I already knew where this was going, but I agreed, just to hear him squirm. We met at a trendy downtown cafe, the kind Ethan liked to post on Instagram about. He arrived in his usual designer outfit, flashing a grin like we were best friends. "I heard you're making waves in the eco-friendly space," he said, stirring his espresso. "Dad's impressed. So am I." I folded my arms. "What do you want, Ethan?" He chuckled. "Look, I know we've had our differences, but I'm running a company now, and we're looking to go green. I figured, why not keep things in the family? You supply the packaging, and we give you guaranteed contracts." I stared at him for a second, then burst out laughing. "You stole my inheritance, pushed me out of my own father's company, and now that you see me succeeding, you want me to work for you?" I shook my head. "That's cute." His smile faltered. "I'm offering you stability." I leaned forward. "I don't need your scraps, Ethan. I'm building something of my own." For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He knew I wasn't the same person who had walked out of that house humiliated. I was someone who didn't need them anymore. I stood, grabbing my bag. "Good luck with your company," I said with a smirk. "You're going to need it." As weeks passed, my business picked up speed. The restaurant chain trial was a huge success, leading to additional contracts. Word spread, and suddenly, retailers and other food chains were reaching out. And my father noticed. One evening, Lucy and I were in the office, celebrating yet another deal, when my phone buzzed. My father's name flashed on the screen. "He's finally breaking," Lucy mused. "Wonder what he wants." I let the call go to voicemail. Then, I turned back to the spreadsheets. "I don't care," I said, grinning. "I'm too busy winning." The glossy business magazine sat on my desk, my face staring back at me from the cover. "The Woman Changing the Future of Sustainable Packaging," the headline read. Seeing my name in print should have felt surreal, but honestly, I'd earned this. Lucy barged into my office, waving her phone excitedly. "Did you see this? The article just went live online, and investors are already buzzing about it." I grinned. "Let 'em talk. We're just getting started." 2 weeks later, I found myself at one of the biggest industry conferences of the year. Our booth was packed with potential clients, journalists, and executives curious about green shift solutions. Every time I pitched our product line, the same pattern emerged. People were interested. They wanted change, and I was giving them exactly that. Then, just as I was finishing a meeting with a major distributor, I spotted them. Ethan. And right beside him, my father. Ethan strolled over, his usual smug expression firmly in place. "Nice setup, Jess," he said, glancing around. "Very modest." I crossed my arms. "Something you need?" He grinned, adjusting his designer watch. I figured I'd give you a little heads up. Joseph Industries is launching our own eco-friendly line next quarter. I wasn't surprised. Copying my business now, Ethan? How original. This is just business, sis, he said with a smirk. We have the resources, the connections, and the clients. You really think you can compete? Before I could answer, a journalist walked by and paused, recognizing me for my recent feature. I smiled. Perfect timing. Actually, I said, pulling out my tablet, I just signed contracts with 3 major restaurant chains and a national retailer. I tapped the screen, displaying the announcements. My production capacity is increasing, and next quarter, we're expanding internationally. Ethan's smirk vanished. I knew he hadn't expected me to move this fast. I turned to my father, who had been silent until now. Still think I wasn't ready for leadership, Dad? His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. For the first time, I saw something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Worry. Good. Let him worry. By the end of the conference, our booth had attracted more attention than I ever imagined. CEOs, investors, and sustainability advocates wanted to schedule meetings. My phone buzzed nonstop with emails from companies wanting to work with us. Lucy grinned as we packed up. That went better than expected. I smirked. Yeah, it did. As we left the conference hall, I spotted Ethan arguing with my father near the exit, both looking frustrated. Let them panic. They had underestimated me. Now, they were watching me win. The news broke like a thunderclap across the business world. Joseph Industries under fire for environmental violations, fines in the millions. I scrolled through the article, sipping my coffee, barely surprised. Reports detailed illegal waste disposal, regulatory breaches, and financial mismanagement under Ethan's leadership. The company was hemorrhaging money, and the fines alone were enough to push it toward bankruptcy. I leaned back in my chair, watching the chaos unfold from a distance. This was inevitable. Lucy burst into my office, breathless. Jess, have you seen the news? I turned my laptop screen toward her. I've been enjoying it all morning. She laughed. Well, you'll love this. Meredith just filed for divorce. That caught my attention. Seriously? Oh, yeah. Turns out, the moment the money started disappearing, so did her love for Richard. Lucy smirked. And, get this, Ethan fled to Dubai. I raised an eyebrow. Running from the fallout? More like running from creditors. Apparently, he emptied some accounts before leaving, and now, the company's on the verge of collapse. I couldn't stop the small, satisfied smile from forming. Poetic justice. Then, the desperate messages started pouring in. First from Ethan. Jess, we need to talk. Things got bad fast. There's a way we can fix this. Let's meet. Then, my father. Jessica, I made a mistake. I see that now. Please, let's talk before it's too late. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. But not from sadness, from clarity. These were the same people who dismissed me. The same ones who pushed me aside, who called me too emotional, who told me I didn't belong. And now? They needed me. Lucy folded her arms, reading over my shoulder. You're not seriously thinking about responding, are you? I locked my phone and set it aside. No, I said simply. Let them feel it. Let them sit in the ruins of their own decisions. Joseph Industries was collapsing. Ethan was gone. Meredith had moved on. And, my father? He was learning, far too late, that he had bet on the wrong child. I had spent years proving my worth, begging for a place in my father's company. Now, that company was dying, and I was thriving. For the third time that week, my father stood in the lobby of my office, waiting to see me. Maria, my assistant, peeked her head in. He's here again. Want me to send him away? I exhaled, staring at my reflection in the window. A year ago, I would have given anything for his approval. Now, I didn't need it, but maybe I needed closure. I nodded. Send him in. A moment later, Richard walked in, looking nothing like the powerful businessman I had grown up fearing and admiring. His once pristine suit hung loose on his frame, his hair more gray than I remembered. He looked tired. He sat across from me, hands clasped, staring at my desk, the desk I had built for myself. I owe you an apology, he said, voice heavy with regret. I stayed silent, waiting. He sighed. I should have given you the company. I see that now. I let Meredith influence me. Let Ethan charm me with big promises. I thought I was protecting the business. His voice wavered. Instead, I destroyed it. I studied him, searching for manipulation, for excuses, but there were none. Just a broken man finally, facing his mistakes. I knew about the trust fund, he admitted suddenly. Your grandmother told me years ago. I stiffened. What? He nodded. She told me she was giving you a safety net, but I ignored it. I didn't want to believe you needed it. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing by giving Ethan control. He swallowed hard. I was wrong. For years, I had begged for my father to see me. And now, here he was, too late but finally looking. I took a slow breath. I'm not going to save Joseph Industries. I know. His voice was quiet. I wouldn't ask you to. Silence settled between us. Not angry, not bitter, just quiet. After a moment, he cleared his throat.